Sometimes the cruelest words come wrapped in laughter at the dinner table, don't they? I used to think that family gatherings were supposed to feel warm and welcoming, but for 34 years, every holiday felt like stepping onto a stage where I was cast as the punchline before I even opened my mouth. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I went from being the family embarrassment to building something they never saw coming, and what happened when they finally discovered the truth about the life I'd been quietly creating while they were too busy laughing at me. Growing up in a small suburb outside of Denver, Colorado, I was always the one who didn't quite fit the mold my family had in mind. My older brother Nathan was the golden child who went to law school at Northwestern and joined a prestigious firm in Chicago before he turned 28. My younger sister Madison married her college sweetheart, had 3 beautiful children by the time she was 30, and lived in a gorgeous colonial house in Connecticut that looked like something out of a home decorating magazine. And then there was me, the middle child who dropped out of her MBA program to learn coding from YouTube videos and Stack Overflow forms, the one who lived in a series of cramped apartments while trying to build apps that my family dismissed as expensive hobbies. Every Thanksgiving, without fail, the comments would start before the turkey even made it to the table. My father would clear his throat, adjust his reading glasses, and say something like, "So Emma, still playing around with those computer games?" The way he said computer games, you'd think I was a teenager wasting time on social media instead of a grown woman building software solutions for small businesses. My mother would give me that look, the one that managed to convey disappointment and embarrassment in a single glance, before turning to Madison and asking about the children's latest achievements or Nathan's most recent courtroom victory. The Christmas before everything changed, we gathered at my parents' sprawling ranch-style home in Denver, the same house where I'd grown up feeling like a stranger in my own family. The decorations were perfect, of course. My mother had always been meticulous about appearances, twinkling lights wrapped around every banister, a 12-foot tree dominated the living room, and the dining table was set with the china that only came out for special occasions. As I helped set out the appetizers, trying to make myself useful in the only way they seemed to appreciate, I overheard Nathan talking to our cousin Bradley in the den. "Emma's still doing that tech thing," Nathan was saying. And I could hear the air quotes around tech thing, even though I couldn't see his hands. Mom and Dad don't say it, but they're worried she's going to be living in studio apartments forever. I mean, she's 34. When is she going to get serious about life? Bradley laughed, that uncomfortable laugh people do when they don't know quite how to respond to family gossip. "Maybe she'll figure it out eventually," he offered. And I had to bite my tongue to keep from marching in there and telling them both exactly what I'd figured out. But I didn't. I just arranged the cheese and crackers into a perfect spiral and pretended I hadn't heard a word. You see, what my family didn't know was that my expensive hobby had quietly transformed into something much bigger than they could have imagined. 3 years earlier, I developed a software solution for inventory management that caught the attention of several major retailers. What started as a side project to help a friend with her boutique had evolved into a sophisticated platform that was now being used by hundreds of businesses across the country. I'd hired a team of developers, secured significant funding from investors who actually understood what I was building, and just that fall, we'd crossed the $1 million revenue mark. But I never told them, not when my mother asked if I needed money for rent, her voice dripping with that particular brand of maternal concern that felt more like condescension. Not when Nathan offered to review my resume, assuming I must be job hunting again. Not when Madison suggested I could always move back home if things got too tough, patting my hand like I was a child who'd scraped her knee. I just smiled, thanked them for their concern, and changed the subject to safer topics like the weather or the latest Netflix series everyone was watching. The breaking point came at Madison's 35th birthday party. She'd rented out an entire winery in Napa Valley, flying the whole family out for a weekend of wine tasting and celebration. It was exactly the kind of event my family loved, all surface glamour and photo opportunities. The party itself was held in the main tasting room, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking endless rows of grapevines. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, waiters circulated with trays of elegant hors d'oeuvres, and a photographer captured every moment for posterity. During the toasts, Nathan stood up, his wine glass catching the light from the chandeliers. He was wearing one of his expensive suits, the kind that probably cost more than most people's rent, And his smile had that practiced quality that came from years of performing in courtrooms. To Madison, he began, his voice carrying easily through the room, who proves that success isn't about chasing pipe dreams or living in fantasy worlds. It's about making smart choices. Nichilia, building a real life and creating something meaningful. Everyone raised their glasses and murmured agreement. I saw my Aunt Patricia actually dab at her eyes with her napkin, as if Nathan had just delivered some profound wisdom instead of a thinly veiled dig at my life choices. Then my mother stood up, her pearl necklace catching the light as she moved. "I'd like to add something," she said, her voice warm when she looked at Madison, then cooling noticeably when her gaze swept over me. "To my daughter, who makes us proud every day, and to hoping that all my children find their way to success and happiness." The emphasis on all my children was subtle but unmistakable. Around the room, I caught the knowing glances, the sympathetic looks from distant relatives who'd heard the stories about poor Emma, still trying to find herself in her 30s. My wine glass trembled in my hand, and for a moment I thought about standing up and telling them everything. About the office space I'd just leased in downtown San Francisco, about the team of brilliant people who believed in what we were building, about the acquisition offers I'd already turned down because I knew we were just getting started. Instead, I raised my glass with everyone else and took a long sip of wine that tasted like disappointment and old resentments. Later that night, after the cake had been cut and the photographs had been taken, I found myself helping the catering staff clean up. It wasn't my job, of course, but I've always found comfort in being useful, in having something to do with my hands when my mind is racing. As I stacked plates and gathered empty glasses, Nathan appeared at my elbow. He'd loosened his tie and unbuttoned his collar, but he still looked like he'd stepped out of a law firm's recruitment brochure. "You know, Em," he said, using the childhood nickname that felt like fingernails on a chalkboard coming from him, "you don't have to do this. The staff gets paid to clean up." I kept stacking plates, not trusting myself to look at him. "I don't mind helping," I said, keeping my voice neutral. He sighed, that particular older brother sigh that suggested he was about to dispense some wisdom I hadn't asked for. "That's your problem, you know. You're always trying to help, always working on the margins instead of being in the center of things. When are you going to stop playing support staff in your own life?" The irony of his words was so sharp, I almost laughed. Here I was, the founder and CEO of a company that was disrupting an entire industry, and my own brother saw me as the help. I set down the stack of plates carefully, turned to face him, and for just a moment, I let him see something in my eyes that made him take a small step back. "I'm exactly where I need to be, Nathan," I said quietly. "But thank you for your concern." That night, I drove back to my hotel in silence, watching the California landscape blur past my window. I'd been saving for years, living frugally, reinvesting everything back into the business. But just a month before Madison's party, I'd finally allowed myself one indulgence. I'd closed on a house in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. It wasn't just any house. It was a stunning modern masterpiece with walls of glass that framed perfect views of the bay, a kitchen that would make a professional chef weep with joy, and a home office that was bigger than my last 3 apartments combined. I'd moved in quietly, not even posting about it on social media. I'd arranged every piece of furniture myself, hung art on the walls, planted herbs in the garden. It was mine in a way nothing had ever been mine before, bought with money I'd earned, building something from nothing while my family thought I was wasting my life. And sitting in that hotel room after Madison's party, I made a decision. I was done being the family's inside joke. I was done dimming my light to make them more comfortable with their assumptions about my life. The next morning, I flew back to San Francisco and threw myself into planning. If I was going to reveal the life I'd built, I was going to do it on my term. I scheduled a housewarming party for 3 weeks later, on a Saturday evening, when the sunset would paint the bay in shades of golden pink. I sent out elegant invitations to my real circle, the people who had supported me through the late nights and early mornings, who had believed in my vision when it was just wireframes and wishful thinking. The guest list was intentionally curated. There was David, my first investor, who had taken a chance on me when I was still working out of a coffee shop. Sarah, my CTO, who had left a comfortable job at Google to help me build something new. Marcus, my mentor from the Startup Accelerator, who had taught me that success wasn't just about the technology, but about the story you tell. Friends from the industry who had become like family. Clients who had become advocates. Not a single person who had ever called my work a hobby or suggested I should find something more stable. The night of the party was one of those perfect Northern California evenings where the weather seems to conspire to create magic. The caterers I'd hired set up stations throughout the house, each offering a different culinary experience. A jazz trio played on the deck, their music floating through the open doors and windows. Fairy lights twinkled in the garden, and the bar was stocked with local wines and craft cocktails named after different programming languages, a touch that made my tech friends laugh. As guests arrived, I felt a joy I hadn't experienced in years. These people knew me, the real me. They didn't see Emma the family disappointment, or Emma, the eternal student who couldn't figure life out. They saw Emma the founder, the problem solver, the leader who had built something remarkable. We toasted to milestones reached and challenges overcome. Sarah gave an impromptu speech about the time we'd worked 72 hours straight to fix a critical bug before a major client presentation. How I'd kept everyone's spirits up with terrible coding jokes and an endless supply of Thai food. My friend Jessica, a photographer who specialized in architectural shoots, had offered to document the evening. She captured everything with her usual artistic eye. The moments of laughter around the kitchen island, the group photo on the deck with the bay sparkling in the background, the quiet moment when I stood alone in my office, looking out at the view I'd earned through years of work my family had dismissed. The photos were stunning, telling a story of success and celebration that needed no words. I didn't post them myself. I've never been one for social media grandstanding. But my guests had no such reservations. Throughout the evening and into the next day, my Facebook and Instagram feeds filled with tagged photos and posts. So proud of this incredible woman and everything she's built, David wrote, sharing a photo of us raising champagne glasses. From garage startup to industry leader, Emma shows us what's possible when you refuse to give up on your vision, Sarah posted, along with a shot of the whole team gathered in my living room. But it was Jessica's post that really started the avalanche. She created a beautiful carousel of images from the evening, each one showcasing a different aspect of the house and the celebration. Her caption read, "Honored to photograph the housewarming of one of Silicon Valley's most inspiring entrepreneurs. Emma, you've created something beautiful in every sense of the word. Here's to the empire you've built and the lives you've changed along the way." I woke up Sunday morning to my phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, more Facebook notifications than I could count. I knew without looking who they were from. I made myself a cup of coffee in my beautiful kitchen, sat on my deck watching the morning fog roll across the bay, and finally picked up my phone to survey the damage. The messages followed a predictable pattern. My mother's text started with confusion, progressed through hurt, and landed on indignation. "I cannot believe we had to find out about your new house through Facebook. This is not how family treats each other." Madison's messages were more passive-aggressive, lots of question marks and statements like, "I guess some people forget where they come from when they get successful." But it was Nathan's voicemail that really captured the family's collective response. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Emma, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is incredibly hurtful to Mom and Dad. You buy a mansion, throw a party for everyone except your family, and let us find out through social media? I thought you were better than this. Call me back? We need to talk about your priorities." I didn't call him back. I didn't respond to any of them, not immediately. Instead, I spent the day in my garden, tending to the plants I'd carefully selected for their ability to thrive in coastal weather. There was something deeply satisfying about working with my hands, creating beauty or beauty in my own space, on my own terms. As the sun set, painting the sky in the same glorious colors as the night before, I finally sat down to craft a response. But before I could type a single word, my doorbell rang. The security camera showed Nathan standing at my gate, his face a mask of determination. He'd driven the 6 hours from Los Angeles without calling ahead, showing up like he had some inherent right to my time and space. I watched him on the monitor for a long moment, remembering all the times he dismissed me, all the jokes at my expense, all the assumptions about my failures. Then I pressed the intercom button. Nathan, I said, my voice calm. I wasn't expecting you. Emma, come on, he said, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Let me in. We need to talk. Do we? I asked, genuinely curious what he thought we needed to discuss. You can't just shut out your family like this, he said, his lawyer voice kicking in. Whatever issues you have with us, this isn't the way to handle it. I almost laughed at the irony. Here was the man who had spent years shutting me out of conversations about success and achievement, suddenly concerned about family inclusion. But I pressed the gate release anyway. Some conversations need to happen face to face, even when you know they're going to be difficult. He pulled up the driveway slowly, his BMW looking out of place next to my Tesla. I watched him take in the house, saw his eyes widen as he registered the scope of what I'd achieved. When I opened the front door, he stood there for a moment, seemingly at a loss for words. It was possibly the first time in our adult lives that Nathan didn't have a prepared speech ready. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Would you like some coffee? Water? He followed me through the foyer, his eyes taking in every detail, the original artwork on the walls, the designer furniture, the view that seemed to stretch forever. When we reached the kitchen, he finally found his voice. This place is incredible, he said, and for once, there was no condescension in his tone, just genuine surprise. Thank you, I said, busying myself with the coffee maker. I've been here about 6 weeks now. 6 weeks? He shook his head. Emma, why didn't you tell us? This is huge. Mom would have wanted to help you celebrate. I turned to face him, really looking at my brother for the first time in years. Despite his success, despite his confidence, there was something vulnerable in his expression. Would she, Nathan? Or would she have found a way to make it about how I'm finally getting my life together at 34? He had the grace to wince. That's not fair, he said, but his protest lacked conviction. Isn't it? I handed him a cup of coffee, the expensive beans I'd started buying because I could, because I'd earned the right to small luxuries. Do you remember Madison's birthday? Your toast about pipe dreams and fantasy worlds? Or Christmas, when you told Bradley I'd be living in studio apartments forever? I didn't mean, he started, then stopped. You heard that? I hear everything, Nathan. Every joke, every concerned comment about when I'm going to get serious about life. Every suggestion that I'm the family failure. I've been hearing it for years. He set down his coffee cup, his hands flat on the marble countertop. We were worried about you. You dropped out of your MBA program. You were living in that tiny apartment in Oakland, working all hours on projects we didn't understand. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to ask, I said simply. Just once. Any of you could have asked what I was actually building instead of assuming it was nothing. You could have shown even a fraction of the interest you show in Madison's book club or your latest case victory. But my work was never real to any of you, was it? The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of misunderstandings and missed opportunities. Finally, Nathan spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. What did you build, Emma? So I told him, not the sanitized version I might have shared at family dinners if they'd ever asked, but the real story. The late nights debugging code, the rejections from investors who didn't think a college dropout could build enterprise software, the moment when our first major client signed on, and I cried in my car because I could finally pay my developers on time. The acquisition offers I'd turned down because I believed we could be bigger, better, more impactful. I showed him the office, with its wall of whiteboards covered in product roadmaps and growth projections. I pulled up our client list on my computer, watched his eyes widen as he recognized company names. I told him about the team we'd built, brilliant people from Google and Amazon and Microsoft who had chosen to work with me because they believed in our vision. By the time I finished, the sun was setting again, painting my office in shades of gold. Why did the dream? After he over the Madison, but it was my Aunt Patricia's Facebook comment that really captured the family's collective attempt to rewrite history. On one of Jessica's photos, she wrote, "So proud of our Emma. We always knew she was destined for great things. Family is everything, and we can't wait to celebrate with her properly." The hypocrisy of it made my stomach turn. We always knew she was destined for great things. This from the woman who had spent last Thanksgiving telling anyone who would listen that I was proof that too much education could ruin a woman's chances at happiness. The same aunt who had offered to set me up with her dentist's recently divorced son because beggars can't be choosers and you're not getting any younger, dear. I screenshot the comment and sent it to Sarah with a single emoji. She responded immediately. The audacity is astronomical. Are you okay? Was I okay? It was a question I'd been asking myself since the party. I'd gotten everything I thought I wanted, proved them all wrong in spectacular fashion, and yet I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of carrying resentment. Tired of defining myself in opposition to their expectations. Just tired. A week after Nathan's visit, Madison showed up. Unlike our brother, she called ahead, her voice small and uncertain on the phone. Can I come see you, Emma? Just me, without the kids or Ryan. I think we need to talk. I agreed, partly out of curiosity and partly because Madison had always been the most emotionally intelligent of us, even if she rarely used that intelligence to defend me at family gatherings. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon, dressed down in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual perfect suburban mom attire. She looked younger, more like the sister I remembered from childhood, before we all got locked into our assigned family roles. It's beautiful, she said when I let her in, but her voice was subdued. Really, Emma, it's stunning. I made us tea, the fancy loose-leaf kind she'd introduced me to years ago when we still felt like actual sisters. We sat on the deck, watching boats sail across the bay, neither of us quite ready to dive into the conversation we both knew we needed to have. Finally, Madison set down her cup with a soft clink against the saucer. I've been thinking about what you must have felt all these years, she began, not quite meeting my eyes. Sitting at those dinners, listening to us talk about you like you weren't even there. Like you were some kind of family project that wasn't working out. It hurt, I said simply. There was no point in pretending otherwise. I know, she said, and to my surprise, her eyes filled with tears. I knew it then too. Every time Dad made one of his comments about your little computer projects, every time Mom sighed when someone asked about you, I saw your face. I saw you shrink a little more, and I never said anything. I just let it happen because I was grateful it wasn't me. The honesty of her admission took my breath away. Madison, the perfect daughter with the perfect life, admitting to her own cowardice, was more than I'd expected, more than I'd dared hope for. I wasn't brave, she continued, tears sliding down her cheeks now. I took the easy path, did what was expected, and let them praise me for it while tearing you down for trying something different. And the really messed up part? I was jealous of you. Even while I sat there listening to them criticize your choices, I was jealous that you had the courage to make them. Madison, I started, but she shook her head. No, let me finish. I need to say this. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, a gesture so unlike her usually composed self that it made her seem more real than she had in years. My life looks perfect from the outside. Beautiful house, successful husband, 3 healthy kids. And I love my children. I do. But sometimes I wake up at 3 in the morning and wonder who I would have been if I'd been brave like you, if I'd chosen my own path instead of the one laid out for me. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her confession settling between us. Then I reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. You still can, I said. Choose your own path, I mean. It's never too late. She laughed, a watery sound. I'm 33 with 3 kids under 10. Think that ship has sailed. I was 31 when I started my company, I reminded her. Everyone thought that ship had sailed too. We talked for hours that afternoon, really talked in a way we hadn't since we were teenagers sharing secrets in the dark. She told me about feeling suffocated in her perfect Connecticut life, about the screenplay she'd been writing in secret, about the dreams she'd put on hold. I told her about the loneliness of building something no one in your family understands, about the nights I'd almost given up, about how success felt different than I'd imagined. Before she left, Madison hugged me tight. I want to do better, she whispered. I want to be the sister who celebrates you, not the one who stands by while others tear you down. Can you give me a chance to try? I hugged her back, feeling something shift in my chest. Yeah, I said. I can do that. The family dinner happened 3 weeks later, not at my parents' house with its loaded history and established pecking order, but at a neutral restaurant in San Francisco. I chose the place, made the reservation, set the terms. It was a small thing, but it felt important to meet them on ground where I wasn't automatically cast as the family disappointment. They all came. My parents, looking slightly uncomfortable outside their usual domain. Nathan with his wife Jennifer, who kept shooting him meaningful looks. Addison without her family, as promised, sitting beside me like a quiet ally. The conversation was stilted at first, everyone trying to navigate this new dynamic where I wasn't the butt of jokes or the object of concern. Finally, my father cleared his throat. He'd aged in the years I'd been building my company, his hair more silver than brown now, lines etched deeper around his eyes. "Emma," he began, then stopped, starting again. "I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. We should have paid attention to what you were building instead of deciding it couldn't be important because we didn't understand it." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase the years of dismissal and condescension. But it was a start, and starts are sometimes all we get. The dinner progressed, awkward but not hostile. My mother asked careful questions about my company, clearly trying to understand, even if the technical aspects eluded her. Nathan's wife, who I'd barely known before, turned out to have a background in software development and became an unexpected bridge in the conversation. Near the end of the meal, as we were debating dessert, Nathan raised his water glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," he said, and I tensed, remembering all the toasts that had cut me down. But his expression was different now, humbled. "To Emma, who built something remarkable while the rest of us were too blind to see it, and to second chances, which we probably don't deserve, but hope to earn." They all raised their glasses, and I found myself fighting back tears. Not because everything was suddenly fixed, not because years of hurt had magically disappeared, but because change was possible. People could grow, families could evolve. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but it was possible. That was 6 months ago. The relationships are still complicated, still require careful navigation, but there have been genuine moments of connection. My mother came to my offices and met my team, her eyes wide with wonder at what we'd built. Nathan started referring potential clients to us, using his network to open doors. Madison and I have a standing monthly lunch date where we talk about her screenplay and my latest product launches. The real victory, though, isn't in their changed behavior. It's in mine. I no longer need their approval to feel successful. I don't measure my worth by their standards or dim my light to make them more comfortable. I built something extraordinary not to prove them wrong, but because I believed I could. The fact that they finally see it is nice, but it's not necessary, not anymore. Sometimes I stand in my office, looking out at the bay, and think about that girl who used to sit silently at family dinners, shrinking under the weight of their disappointment. I wish I could tell her that it gets better, that one day she'll build something so undeniable that even the doubters will have to pay attention. But mostly, I'd tell her that the real success isn't in changing their minds. It's in learning that their minds don't define your worth. The company continues to grow. We're expanding into international markets, hiring more developers, solving problems for businesses around the world. The acquisition offers keep coming, each one larger than the last. But I'm not ready to sell. There's more to build, more problems to solve, more proof that the quiet ones who don't fit the family mold sometimes have the most to offer. And sometimes, late at night when I'm working on the deck of my beautiful house, I think about what Nathan said all those months ago at Madison's birthday, about support staff and being the main character in your own life. He was right about one thing: I had been playing a supporting role. But not in my life, in theirs. I'd made myself small to fit into their narrative, accepted their casting because I didn't know I could write my own script. But here's what I've learned, and what I wish every person who's ever been the family disappointment could know. You don't need their permission to be extraordinary. You don't need their understanding to build something meaningful. And you definitely don't need their approval to live a life that makes you proud. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's building something so authentically yours that their opinions become irrelevant. My name is Emma, and I'm no longer the family embarrassment. not because they finally see my worth, but because I do. And in the end, that's the only validation that really matters.